Hello everybody, Dawson here with DDOG Pickleball. We're going to talk about the Neonic Flow and the Neonic Flow Prime X today. So starting off, both the Neonic Flow and the Flow Prime X share the same shape. I call this kind of the elongated shape, much similar to the Huarache X by 11.624, only this shape has a much more manageable handle, in my opinion, at a 5.5 to 5.6 inch handle, with a small taper that lets it tape up to about 5.75 inches per my ruler. My Flow Prime X came in at a static weight of 8.3 and a swing weight of 110, and my Neonic Flow came in at a static weight of 8.1 and a swing weight of 106. I added about 4 to 5 inches of lead in the bottom corners on the Flow Prime X. I then later added another inch or two on both sides of this one while I was testing. And I did about 3 inches of lead on the bottom of the Flow. I found that both these paddles kind of did see some minor edge guard chipping off of light play, so to be safe, I did tape them with white electrical tape, which probably adds about 0.05 static weight, and it didn't affect the swing weight whatsoever. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about these paddles. So both of these paddles are similar to the Neonic Flare Prime X and the Neonic Flare. They're very popular standard shape paddles that come in at 14 and 16 millimeters, with the Flow Prime X being more similar to the Flare Prime X, the only difference this being a 16 millimeter and that being a 14, and the Flow being very similar to the Flare, with the difference this being a just carbon fiber, not the carbon fiberglass that Neonic does with their other paddles. And I actually found that this plays somewhat similar to the Flare, which is a titanium-faced paddle. So first and foremost, with the Flow, I would call this an all-court leaning control. I did not think this was solely a control paddle. I think it hit just a touch too hard to be a control paddle. Guys, this is a deceivingly good paddle. Well, you know, when you think Gen 2 carbon fiber, you usually don't think like a good overall paddle per se in today's game where we have Gen 3 and quote-unquote Gen 4 paddles running around. But there is something to be said about the sweet spot of a Gen 2 all-court carbon fiber paddle. It's something we're all familiar to if we've played in the past, pre the Gen 3 and Gen 4 era, and it's something that is easy to control, use, learn with, and grow with. And I found myself, when testing both of these, at times gravitating more towards this one. With that being said, I will mention, when I mention the more about the fiberglass one for the Flow Prime X, kind of the differences there compared to this one. But I overall just thought this was a good paddle, and at a price of, I believe, $126 after discount code DDOG_pickleball, it's an easy recommendation for me to make for anyone looking for kind of that hybrid pushing elongated shape and just a good overall paddle for a cheap price. Now, let's go into the Flow Prime X. So the Flow Prime X uses Neonic's carbon fiberglass layup. To my knowledge, I believe this is a CFC layup. I will go back and check, and if it is anything different from that, I will add into the video here. But yeah, so with that being said, this is a similar layup to the 11.624 Huarache X and a lot of these other companies and paddles that are now incorporating fiberglass within their paddle lineups materials. And so with that being said, this plays a lot similar to the Flare Prime X. I found just due to the shape, you're able to really do more with the ball, in my opinion. You're able to kind of wrap around the ball more in particular, just from that extended face. Whereas you might be giving up some sweet spot, which I think the sweet spot on both of these paddles for what they are is pretty good. But if you're comparing this to the sweet spot of pretty much any standard shape or wide body shape paddle, it's obviously not going to be as big as that, just because those paddles, that is the big thing they excel in. So with that being said, the Neonic Flow Prime X I found was a solely, in my opinion, all-court paddle. I had it firmly in all-court. I wouldn't really lean it towards power. If anything, I would lean it just a smidge towards control. With that being said, I think this is firmly in the all-court category. A paddle I was testing this with at the time that I did often find had a very similar power level to it was the Bread and Butter Invader. And again, like I mentioned in my Invader review, if you guys haven't checked that out yet, I think that's an all-court as well for the Gen 2s, and I would put the Flow Prime X right there. If it weren't for a couple other paddles I'm working on right now, there's a strong chance I would be maining this. This is probably my favorite paddle from Neonic's lineup to date, along with the Flare Prime X that I reviewed a little while back, if you guys want to check that out. Really good paddle. First off, I love the gradient on this. I know my white edgeguard tape kind of blocks it, but it's got that blue gradient and it goes into white rather than just the all blue. I just think it's nice. It's clean. It's simple. I'm not usually a huge fan of white on the paddles, but the way Neonic has used whites on their paddles, I like that it's not really in the face. You know, it's not adhering anyone from seeing the ball better. And it's just a good overall looking paddle, and it's a good overall playing paddle. You know, I feel that I can play my game, which I would consider myself an all-around player. These days, I'm playing the left usually a little more than the right. In the past, I played the right a fair amount. With that being said, I do consider myself an all-around player, and I think this paddle would be a great fit for me, or someone looking kind of for that Gen 2 all-court category and really trying to stay in and hone their game around that type of paddle. I think that equipment does matter in today's pickleball game day and age, especially with everything getting faster and hotter. It's important to stay up to date. With that being said, that's not always the best thing for everyone's game. There are plenty of players that I know that are very high-level amateur, and some even pushing the lower tiers of pro, that are playing with Gen 1 and Gen 2 paddles and playing perfectly good, and they might not play better with a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 style paddle. So I do want to emphasize that when looking at these paddles just off of today's landscape here in 2025. As always, be sure to use discount code DDOG_pickleball. If you liked this video or this style of review, let us know, leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys around for another review. All right, adios.